Have you ever felt tired? Not just in your body, but somewhere deeper. A kind of tiredness that sleep can't fix. The kind that lives in your chest like a quiet sigh you never get around to exhaling. It's not the fatigue of a long day's work, it's the weariness of years. Years spent striving, fixing, proving, giving, holding it all together. You've shown up over and over again for your family, for your job, for the people who needed you. And maybe you still are. But deep down, beneath all the responsibilities and routines, there's a gentle ache, a question that whispers when everything else finally goes quiet. Do I really have to keep trying this hard? This isn't laziness. It's not giving up. It's the soul's soft request for a different way, not a louder way, not a faster one. A way of living that doesn't require you to constantly push, prove, or chase, just to feel like you're enough. Tonight, together we'll explore that path. A quieter one, a more trusting one. Because maybe, just maybe, peace doesn't come from doing more. Maybe it comes from learning to let go, just enough, to finally breathe. So take a deep breath now. Feel the weight you've been carrying, and gently, without needing to fix anything, let us begin the journey inward, toward the calm place where trying ends and trust begins. Part 1. When effort becomes a cage. There's something noble about effort, the kind that comes from love, from duty, from wanting to give your best to this life. You've lived long enough to know that nothing worthwhile comes easy. And perhaps you were raised in a time when hard work wasn't a choice, it was the rhythm of survival. But somewhere along the way, effort became something else. It turned into a cage, not a visible one of iron, but an invisible burden of expectation. To always be productive, to always be available, to always be on. And what began as a means to care for others became a silent rule. You are only as valuable as what you do. There's an old Buddhist story about a monk who trained relentlessly to attain enlightenment. Every day he meditated for hours, practiced austerities, fasted until his bones showed through his skin. He pushed and pushed, believing that if he just tried hard enough, the gates of wisdom would open. One day, utterly exhausted and filled with despair, he sat beneath a tree by a quiet river. The water moved slowly, unhurried. And as he watched a small leaf float gently by, he realized something that changed everything. The harder I try to force the current, the further I drift from the shore of truth. That night he let go, not of his discipline, but of his grip, and it was in that soft surrender that awakening finally came. How many times in your own life have you tried to force the current? You stayed in relationships far longer than your heart could endure, believing effort alone could make them right. You said yes when your body whispered no, because you thought being needed meant being loved. You overextended, overpromised, overfunctioned, until you forgot where you ended, and others began. And all along there was this subtle voice, not loud, not angry, but tired. A voice that kept asking, is this really how life is meant to feel? The Buddha once said, you only lose what you cling to. And perhaps in clinging to constant doing, we've lost our ability to just be. The irony is, the more we tighten our grip, the more fragile life feels. The more we try to hold everything together, the more we fall apart, because effort that is not grounded in awareness becomes self-punishment, not self-mastery. Let's pause here and breathe into that for a moment. What if all the fixing, the striving, the endless inner tightening was not a path to peace, but a detour away from it? What if, like the monk by the river, you've already done enough, and what's left is not more effort, but more trust? And still, I know what you might be thinking. If I stop trying, won't it all fall apart? If I release control, won't I lose everything I've worked so hard to hold? It's a fair question. It's the question of someone who's spent a lifetime surviving. But survival is not the same as living. One keeps you afloat, the other lets you feel the warmth of the sun on your face. In truth, when effort becomes a cage, it's no longer effort, it's fear in disguise. Fear of being forgotten, of being left behind, of becoming invisible as time moves on. But your worth was never in your doing. It was in your presence, the quiet way you've shown up, the moments you've held others with gentleness, the wisdom you've carried simply by having lived. So now, the path turns, and in this turning, we begin to ask a different kind of question. Not what more should I do, but what is mine to carry, and what can I now set down? Let us move gently toward part 2, where we'll explore the sacred art of release, and how sometimes letting go is the most powerful step we'll ever take. Part 2. The hidden wisdom of letting go. There is a quiet kind of wisdom that doesn't shout, doesn't instruct, doesn't even ask for your attention. It waits, like a breeze that gently stirs the curtains in a silent room. It comes not when you're striving, but when you're still enough to feel its presence. This wisdom lives in the act of letting go. Letting go, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? 2 small words, but to the heart that has held on for decades, to people, to roles, to a certain version of life, it feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. You might ask, if I let go, what's left of me? Let me share with you a story. It comes from the Buddhist tradition about a young disciple and his master walking through the forest. As they journeyed, the student gripped tightly onto a heavy bag filled with books, scrolls, and other items he believed were essential to his growth. The heat was unbearable, the trail steep, but he refused to let go of the weight. Finally, he collapsed from exhaustion. The master, standing quietly beside him, said only this: "Your path will not open if your hands are too full to receive it." That story has stayed with me, perhaps because I see myself in that young disciple. And maybe you do too. How often have we burdened ourselves with things that once mattered, or maybe never did, and convinced ourselves we couldn't let them go? Not just physical possessions, but old disappointments, painful identities, unspoken regrets. We carry them like sacred relics, even as they press against our ribs. But the Buddha taught, to let go does not mean to get rid of. To let go means to let be. When we let be with compassion, things come and go on their own. This kind of letting go is not about abandonment, it's about softening the grip, loosening the knots we've tied around our own heart. There's a woman I once met, in her 70s, who had spent most of her adult life trying to fix a relationship with her younger sister. Every holiday, every phone call, every gesture was an attempt to close a gap that never seemed to shrink. One day, with tears in her eyes and a smile just beginning to form, she said, "I realized I wasn't holding on to her. I was holding on to the version of her I wished existed." It wasn't bitterness that filled her voice. It was freedom, the kind that comes when you finally exhale what you've held too long. Letting go doesn't always mean walking away. Sometimes it means staying. But releasing the need to control the outcome, it means accepting people as they are, not as you need them to be. It means recognizing that peace isn't born from perfect circumstances, but from unclenched hands and an open heart. And this is where Buddhist practice becomes more than philosophy. It becomes breath, body, truth. When we sit in meditation, we're not trying to escape the mind. We're learning to witness its movements without being tangled in them. We're practicing the art of release. Moment by moment, thought arises. We let it be. Emotion comes. We don't push it away. We simply watch it pass, like clouds across a vast sky. That's letting go. So what is it you're still gripping tightly? An old hurt, a former identity, the belief that everything must make sense before you can rest. Whatever it is, you don't have to drop it all at once. You can begin by loosening one finger, then another. Small gestures of release that say, I no longer need this to be okay. As we move forward, we begin to see that trust is not born from having everything figured out. It grows from letting go of what no longer serves us, to make room for what will. Now let's walk gently into part 3, where we'll discover why trust is not weakness, but the quiet strength that anchors us in life's uncertain waters. Part 3, Trust as a Spiritual Power. There's a common misconception in the world that trust is fragile, passive, or naive, that it belongs to dreamers or those too weak to face the harshness of life. But if you've ever stood at the edge of uncertainty and chosen not to run, if you've sat in silence instead of scrambling for solutions, then you know trust is not the absence of strength. It is strength refined. Quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a concept called saddha, often translated as faith or trust. But unlike blind belief, saddha is not about waiting for someone else to save you or for the universe to grant wishes like a genie. No, it is the trust that arises from within, when one has seen the nature of things clearly. It is the kind of trust that knows, even in chaos, even in loss, there is something in you that remains whole. There's a Zen parable I return to often. It tells of a young seeker who travels to a master far away, desperate for answers. My life is falling apart, he says. Nothing I do seems to fix it. What should I do? The master, without looking up from the pot he is stirring, replies calmly, trust the falling apart. The student blinks, confused. But how? The master looks at him, his eyes kind but unwavering. Because it is only through the cracks that new life enters. That moment stays with you, doesn't it? Because perhaps you too have experienced seasons of unraveling, when what you thought was certain slipped through your fingers. Maybe it was a relationship you thought would last forever, or a career that once gave you meaning but no longer fit. Or maybe it was just time itself, slowly taking away roles you once held, people you once knew, identities you once wore like armor. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still present, still capable of love, of change, of grace. Trust, in the Buddhist sense, is not a transaction. It's not saying, if I believe hard enough, life will give me what I want. It's more like saying, even if I don't know what's next, I believe I will meet it with presence. That kind of trust isn't built in easy time. It's carved from silence, from sitting with your pain without rushing to fix it, from waking up on uncertain mornings and choosing to live anyway. I remember hearing about an elderly monk who had gone blind in his later years. When asked if he missed the beauty of the mountains he once climbed, he smiled and said, I do, but now I see with my feet. He meant it literally. Every step he took was now guided, not by vision but by trust. And in that act of surrender, he found a deeper kind of clarity, the kind that doesn't need to see in order to know. Trust, like that, isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself or prove its worth. It just is. And when you embody it, others feel it. Not because you speak with conviction, but because your silence doesn't tremble. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to trust the timing of your life, even when it makes no sense? What would it feel like to stand in the middle of a question, without racing to answer it, and know that you are still whole? This is not weakness. This is the courage of surrender. This is the posture of the mountain that does not chase the clouds, but lets them pass. And now, as we move gently onward, let us enter part 4, where we'll explore how you no longer have to chase what is already meant for you. Part 4. You don't have to chase what's already meant for you. Second, have you ever found yourself running toward something, a relationship, a goal, a dream, with all your might, only to arrive breathless and aching, and wonder why it still felt out of reach. It's a familiar ache, especially as we grow older. You may have chased after love, only to feel unseen. You may have pursued a sense of purpose, only to be met with confusion. And somewhere along the way, you might have asked yourself quietly, why does everything I want seem to run from me the harder I try? It's a question that reveals a deeper truth. In our striving, we often forget a sacred law of life, that what is truly meant for us does not require a chase. It requires alignment. There's a Zen tale about a man who searched the land for a rare and sacred flower believed to grant inner peace. He climbed mountains, crossed rivers, even consulted scholars and monks, all the while growing weary and frustrated. One evening, lost and exhausted, he sat down beside a stream to rest. As he closed his eyes, a breeze passed over his face, and when he opened them, he noticed a single delicate bloom beside the water, the very flower he had been seeking. It had been growing quietly by the path, not hidden, but overlooked in his rush to find it. The lesson was simple and profound. What you're meant to find is often waiting where you've already been. And maybe that's the heart of it. The more we chase, the more we blind ourselves to what's already near. The more we run, the more we miss the still beauty that has been walking beside us all along. In Buddhist teachings, there's a principle known as tathata, or suchness, the idea that life, as it is, holds all the wisdom we need. We don't need to add anything to it. We only need to be fully present to what already is. But presence is hard to hold when we are always reaching, always comparing, always pushing ourselves toward the next thing. Sometimes we confuse ambition with alignment. We believe if we just try harder, do more, prove ourselves enough, we'll finally earn what we long for. But what if the very act of chasing is what creates the distance? A woman once told me about how she spent decades trying to gain the approval of her father, a man who never offered praise, no matter her success. She climbed professional ladders, raised a family, stayed strong through every storm, yet always felt one step behind his affection. It wasn't until she was well into her 60s that something shifted. During a quiet morning, sipping tea on her porch, she whispered aloud, "I don't need him to see me anymore. I finally see myself." And in that moment, she stopped chasing. She didn't stop loving. She simply stopped running after love that wouldn't meet her halfway. That decision didn't make her weaker. It made her free. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." This isn't just a call to stop looking. It's a call to look differently, to stop asking the world for proof that you are enough, and instead begin to live from the quiet knowing that you already are. So here's a question worth asking, especially now. What have you been chasing that might actually be waiting for you to slow down and receive it? What would happen if, instead of running toward life, you allowed life to walk toward you? This is the tender beginning of trust, not a giving up, but a letting in. And as we cross into part 5, we'll begin to unearth what truly drives our chase, the quiet force beneath it all, and learn how fear makes us grip, while wisdom gently shows us how to release. Part 5, Fear makes you grip. Wisdom helps you release. There's a reason your hands clench when you're afraid. It's instinct, a primal reflex built into your nervous system, inherited from a time when danger was physical and survival meant holding on tight. But not all fear comes from lions and cliffs. As we grow older, the fears that grip us change shape. They become quieter but no less powerful. Fear of being alone, of becoming irrelevant, of losing control, of time slipping faster than we can manage. And in response, we hold on. We hold on to routines that no longer serve us, to people who don't see us, to identities we've outgrown. We grip Not because we're strong, but because we're scared of what might happen if we let go. The Buddha once taught, the root of suffering is attachment. And at first, those words can sound harsh. Does this mean we shouldn't care, shouldn't love? Not at all. The teaching isn't asking you to detach from life. It's asking you to loosen the grip that comes from fear and to hold everything more gently, with open hands and a soft heart. There's a story I once heard about a man who approached a wise teacher and asked how to find peace. The teacher handed him a glass filled to the brim with water and said, "Carry this through the market without spilling a drop." The man walked carefully, shoulders tense, hands stiff, eyes fixed. By the end, his body ached. "Now," the teacher said, "do it again, but this time breathe and trust that you don't have to control every movement." And as he walked the second time, lighter, more present, something changed. His posture softened. He smiled. The water stayed still, not because he held tighter, but because he moved in harmony. That's what fear doesn't understand, that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Fear will always tell you to grab tighter. Wisdom invites you to let life breathe. And I wonder, in your own life, what are you gripping right now? Is it an old sense of duty that no longer brings you joy? A belief that if you stop pushing, the world will forget you? A habit of saying yes, even when your whole being says no? These grips often begin subtly, almost invisibly, and yet they weigh so much over time. Let me tell you about a retired teacher I once met at a small meditation retreat in the hills of New Mexico. She had taught for over 30 years, raised 2 children on her own, and volunteered weekly even after retirement. When I asked why she came to the retreat, she said, "I needed permission to stop." I asked, "From whom?" And after a long pause, she answered, "From myself." That answer still echoes in me. You see, no one else can give you that permission. No one else can say, "You've done enough." Only you can place your burdens down. Only you can decide that gripping out of fear is no longer the way forward. In Buddhist practice, we often return to the breath, not because the breath is magical, but because it teaches us how to release. Every exhale is a letting go, every inhale a receiving. We don't hold the breath, we let it flow. Life asks the same of us. So now I ask you gently, what would change if you trusted just enough to loosen your grip, not to drop everything, not to run away, but to soften, to allow a little more room for life to surprise you? Because here's what wisdom knows: what is meant to stay will never need to be clutched, and what's meant to pass through your hands will do so no matter how tightly you hold. Let us carry this understanding forward into part 6, where we'll explore one of life's most misunderstood gifts, the natural slowness that comes with age, and why slowing down is not a sign of decline, but a doorway to deeper presence. Part 6, Slowness is not stagnation. You've probably noticed that the pace of your body, your days, and even your thoughts has shifted over the years. What once felt effortless, getting up early, moving quickly, juggling demands, now asks more of you. And perhaps, on certain days, you wonder quietly to yourself, am I falling behind? But let me offer you a different lens. What if you're not falling behind at all? What if this slowing is not something to resist, but something sacred to embrace? In the quiet world of Zen Buddhism, there's an old saying, when walking, walk. When eating, eat. Simple, isn't it? Yet behind that simplicity is a profound truth, that true living does not happen when we rush from one moment to the next. It happens in the slowness, in the noticing, in the breath between tasks. There is a beautiful parable from the Theravada tradition about an elderly monk who no longer joined the others for early morning alms rounds. Instead, he would slowly sweep the monastery grounds each morning, step by step, breath by breath. A young novice, eager and full of energy, asked the abbot, "Why does he no longer serve with the rest of us? Is he too weak?" The abbot smiled and replied, "He is serving still, just no longer trying to outrun time." That image stayed with me, because so often we confuse slowness with uselessness. In a world addicted to urgency, we are taught that speed equals value, that if you're not producing, responding, or moving quickly, you must be stuck. But the teachings of the Buddha gently remind us that presence is not measured by motion, and sometimes stillness is the most active kind of awareness there is. I once spoke with a widower in his early 80s who told me that after his wife passed, he stopped moving quickly, not because of grief, but because he began to see more. "When I walk now," he said, "I notice the way light falls on the sidewalk, the sound of birds I used to ignore. I used to think slowing down was a loss. Now I think it's how I finally arrived." It made me wonder, how much beauty do we miss when we rush to get somewhere else? How many soft, ordinary miracles pass us by because we're too busy measuring progress? The Buddha taught, "As a bee gathers nectar without harming the flower, so should a wise one live." That teaching speaks of gentleness, not only toward others, but toward ourselves. It invites us to move through life with presence, not pressure. And that kind of movement is not fast, it's deliberate, it's rooted. It trusts that whatever needs to unfold will do so in its own season. So if your body moves a little slower these days, if your mornings stretch longer, if your energy dips in the afternoon, bless it. You are not less alive because you are less fast. You are more alive because you are finally present. There is wisdom that only slowness reveals. The wisdom of breath, of rhythm, of being exactly where you are. When you walk without rushing, you begin to hear the whispers of life, the ones drowned out by noise and hurry. So now, let's pause together and take a breath, not to prepare for what's next, but to truly be. As we continue into part 7, we'll step into a deeper silence, not the absence of sound, but the fertile stillness, where the most important truths quietly wait to be heard, because it is in the silence, not the storm, where the soul often speaks the loudest. Part 7. The gifts hidden in silence. Silence can feel strange at first, especially in a world so full of noise. We're surrounded by hums and pings and voices, constant reminders that the world is busy and we should be too. And yet, there's something ancient within you that recognizes the sacredness of silence, even if it's been buried under years of motion. Have you noticed how silence often comes uninvited in later life? The house grows quieter, the phone rings less often, the days stretch longer. For some, this stillness feels like loneliness. But what if, just what if, silence is not a void to fear, but a space to finally come home to yourself? In Buddhist practice, silence is not emptiness. It is fullness without form. It is where the noise of ego softens and the voice of the heart begins to emerge. The Buddha himself spent much of his life not speaking, not because he lacked wisdom, but because he understood that some truths cannot be taught, only experienced. There's a well-known Zen story that speaks directly to this. A young monk, eager to understand enlightenment, asked his master for the final, ultimate teaching. The master said nothing. He simply poured a cup of tea until it spilled over, then placed the cup before the student. The monk waited, confused. Finally, the master spoke. "Your mind is like this cup, too full to receive anything new. Empty it." That lesson was not in the words. It was in the silence, in the space between the pouring and the understanding. That is where the gift lived. You, too, have likely had moments like this, when silence was not absence, but clarity. When you stood at a window and watched the wind move through the trees, And for just a moment, everything made sense without needing explanation. When someone sat beside you in quiet grief or love, and no words could have said more than their stillness. These are the moments we overlook in our rush to speak, to fill the gap, to solve what was never broken. And yet silence has its own rhythm, its own wisdom. It teaches patience. It asks us to listen beyond the ears, to feel what is truly present, not just what is loud. A woman once told me that after her husband passed, the silence in the house felt unbearable, but over time it began to change. She stopped turning on the television for background noise. She started sitting by the window with a cup of tea, letting the quiet settle around her. At first, she said, "I felt alone, but now I feel accompanied by something I can't name. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's him, maybe it's just me." That is the gift. Not silence for its own sake, but silence as a doorway, a return, a sacred place where what you truly feel can rise to the surface without interruption. The Dhammapada says, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace," but often the word that brings peace is the one that is never spoken, only felt, only known in the stillness that surrounds it. So I invite you now, gently, not to fear the quiet. When silence enters, don't rush to fill it. Let it stretch. Let it show you what's been waiting underneath all the noise, the memory, the insight, the forgotten feeling, the breath. And from this still, open space, let us now move to part 8, where we'll gently step away from the constant urge to prove ourselves and begin the sacred practice of remembering that our worth was never something we had to earn. Part 8, the end of proving, the beginning of belonging. Somewhere along the winding road of life, many of us inherited an unspoken belief that we must earn our place in the world, that we must do enough, be enough, prove enough to belong. Perhaps this belief was shaped by early years, when love came with conditions. Or maybe it crept in through society's quiet whispers, measuring worth in busyness, achievement, usefulness. But now, in the stillness of later life, a deeper question begins to rise. Who am I when I stop trying to prove anything? It's a tender question, because for decades, your roles defined you. You were the parent who held the family together, the worker who showed up no matter what, the friend who listened when others fell apart. You gave, you endured, you showed strength, even when no one saw the wear it caused. And perhaps you've wondered, if I no longer do all of this, do I still matter? Let me tell you the story of an old monk named Therataka, who lived in solitude in the forest outside the monastery. In his younger years, he had been known for his fierce dedication, teaching, building, serving tirelessly. But in his older age, his body grew slower, and he quietly retreated into silence and seclusion. Some of the younger monks questioned his worth now. "He no longer contributes," they whispered. But one morning, as they sat in meditation, the abbot said, "Tataka's stillness supports us more than our noise. His very presence teaches us peace." The truth became clear. He no longer had to prove his value. He simply became it. What if your presence is enough? Not your productivity, not your past accomplishments, not your ability to explain yourself, defend yourself, or stay busy so others won't forget you. Just your presence, your quiet, weathered, luminous presence. In Buddhist wisdom, this is the beginning of true belonging. Not belonging that must be negotiated or earned, but the kind that arises from simply existing. A belonging to the breath, to the earth beneath your feet, to the moment that holds you exactly as you are. A woman I once met at a mindfulness retreat told me she used to go out of her way to be needed by others. She said yes to every request, cooked every holiday meal, called everyone before they called her. But inside she was exhausted. I was terrified that if I wasn't useful, I would disappear. But one day, after a silent walking meditation, she began to cry. I realized, she said, I've never asked myself if I belong to me. That moment, raw, honest, holy, marked a new beginning, the end of proving, the beginning of coming home. In truth, the constant pressure to prove is a kind of suffering. It ties your worth to the ever-changing opinions of others, and it keeps you from resting in the deep, unshakable truth that you are already enough before you ever lifted a finger. As the Buddha reminded his disciples, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection, not because of what you've done, but because you are still here, still breathing, still awake to the unfolding moment. So now, take a moment to ask yourself, who am I beneath all the proving? What happens when I sit in a room, alone, and no one expects anything from me? Is there peace in that space, or does it still feel unfamiliar? If it feels unfamiliar, that's okay. You are not alone in that. It takes time to unlearn a lifetime of performance, but the reward is a kind of freedom that no one can take from you. Let us step now, hand in heart, into part 9, where we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself, to stop searching for answers out there, and begin the quiet return to the sanctuary within. Because the deepest trust begins not with the world, but with you. Part 9. When you trust, you return to yourself. There comes a time in life, often not in youth, but much later, when the search for answers outside yourself begins to quiet. You've read the books, followed the advice, tried to be who others expected. You've searched in roles, in relationships, in responsibilities, and yet there's a still enduring invitation that remains. Come back. Not to the world, but to yourself. It's not always easy to accept that invitation. For so many years, perhaps even decades, your attention has been turned outward. Taking care of others, meeting deadlines, keeping things running. You were the strong one, the reliable one, the one who showed up even when your own needs were a whisper in the background. And now, as the outer noise begins to soften, perhaps because the children have grown, or the career has slowed, or life simply no longer demands your constant effort, something new is calling. Or maybe something very old, the voice of your own being. There is a beloved Buddhist tale of a seeker who traveled across the world in search of wisdom. He visited temples, debated monks, read sacred texts. He fasted, prayed, and meditated for years. One day, exhausted and disillusioned, he stumbled upon a tiny hut at the edge of a mountain village. Inside, an old woman welcomed him, offering tea. He sighed, "I've searched everywhere for the truth, and I'm no closer now than when I began." She poured the tea, smiling gently. "Then stop searching," she said. "You've been carrying it all along, but your hands were too full to feel it. Sometimes, the journey away from ourselves is necessary. It helps us gather experience, learn, grow. But there comes a sacred moment when that journey must turn inward. That's the moment when trust becomes more than just a spiritual idea. It becomes a return, a rerouting in the ground of your own being. And what do you find when you come home to yourself? Often you find silence first, then resistance. Old doubts rise up like ghosts. Am I enough? Who am I without my usefulness? What if there's nothing here? These are not signs of failure. They're signs that you're arriving at the threshold of something real, something deeper than roles or appearances. A man in his late 70s once told me that he spent much of his life wearing masks. Not because he was dishonest, but because he didn't know who he was without them. When I retired, he said, I felt like I'd disappeared, but over time I realized maybe what was disappearing was the part of me that never truly belonged, and what remained, that still, steady voice inside, that was the part that was real all along. The Buddha taught that the self is not a fixed identity, but a flowing process, always changing, always becoming. Trust, then, is not about anchoring to who you were. It's about embracing who you are now and allowing that to be enough. It is in this space that the deepest healing happens, not from fixing, but from recognizing that there is nothing broken. You begin to listen to your body with kindness. Instead of pushing it like a machine, you begin to speak to yourself with the same tenderness you once reserved for others. You walk slower, breathe deeper, and find meaning not in what you accomplish, but in how you experience the moment. And when that shift takes root, when your inner world becomes a place of refuge instead of criticism, the world outside begins to reflect it. People respond to your calm, your steadiness, your presence, not because you're trying to impress them, but because they can feel the quiet power of someone who has finally come home. So now, let us carry this homecoming into part 10, where we'll see that trust isn't passive waiting, but a steady kind of presence, a quiet, courageous way of showing up for life, not from fear, but from part 10. Real trust is not passive, it's present. It's easy to confuse trust with waiting, to think that trusting life means sitting still, doing nothing, simply hoping things will work out. But real trust, the kind rooted in wisdom and presence, is not idle. It is alive, awake, engaged. It's not about stepping back from life, but about stepping into it with a different kind of energy, one that no longer panics, no longer grasps, but listens deeply and moves deliberately. The Buddha once said, "A mind unshaken by circumstances is like a steady flame in the wind." That's what trust looks like. Not a denial of change, not a refusal to act, but a calm clarity that arises when we are no longer driven by fear, when our actions are not reactions but reflections. Let me share a story with you. There was once a laywoman who visited a forest monastery during the rainy season. The monks and nuns, observing their annual retreat, sat for hours in meditation each day. She too would sit in the meditation hall, but she was different from the others. Her body did not move even slightly. She barely blinked. After weeks, one of the novices asked her, "How can you sit so still for so long?" She smiled and replied, "I am not waiting for the bell to ring. I am already here." That story touches something essential. When we trust, we stop measuring our lives by outcomes, by when things will finally happen, when healing will be complete, when clarity will arrive. We stop looking toward the horizon and finally settle into the ground beneath our feet. Trust, you see, is not about what we're expecting. It's about how we are showing up now. Many older adults I've spoken with express the same quiet tension, a sense that they should still be doing more, moving faster, staying busy just to prove they're not slowing down too much. But presence doesn't rush, and it certainly doesn't perform. When you act from presence, you're not driven by what will people think, or what if I fall behind. You're driven by a quiet knowing that each step matters, even if no one sees it. You might be planting a garden, sharing a kind word, preparing a simple meal, and that's enough. Truly it is. Because it's not about the scale of your doing, it's about the sincerity of your being. Presence turns the ordinary into the sacred. There's a teaching in Zen that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It reminds us that presence doesn't change what we do, it changes how we do it. With trust, the same actions become acts of devotion, of stillness, of love. Trust also means not interfering when things are not moving. Sometimes you'll look around and feel like life is standing still. No big changes, no major signs, just quiet. And the mind, oh, how it hates quiet. It will tell you to fix, to stir the waters, to create movement, just so you feel productive again. But what if the stillness is where something sacred is forming? What if the lack of progress is actually preparation? A man I once knew, retired, widowed, childless, told me that the hardest thing he ever did was stop trying to make his days meaningful. At first he said it felt like giving up, but then he added, "Now I just live the day. I make the bed, walk to the mailbox, sit with my tea, and it's enough. I don't know why, but it feels holy." That's presence, that's trust. So now I ask you, where in your life are you still waiting, when you could be arrived? What have you postponed, thinking it only matters if it leads somewhere? Because when you move with trust, not chasing, not waiting, but showing up, fully here, you begin to feel the quiet pulse of life again. Let us walk now into part 11, where we'll gently place down the illusion that we must carry the weight of everything. We'll explore how trust teaches us to release the burden of the world, not out of neglect, but out of compassion. Compassion for ourselves, compassion for our limits, and compassion for the life we're finally allowing ourselves to live. Part 11. You don't have to carry the universe. How many years have you spent carrying things no one ever asked you to carry? Worries that were not yours, responsibilities that should have been shared, expectations inherited from generations past. And silently, with grace, you bore them, because that's what strong people do, isn't it? You became the pillar others leaned on, the one who held the family together, who kept things going, who made sure no one fell apart. But somewhere along the way, perhaps you forgot, you too were never meant to hold the whole world on your shoulders. In the teachings of the Buddha, compassion begins not with others, but with oneself. There is a Pali word for it, metta, loving kindness, not just extended outward, but inward, to the very parts of ourselves we often overlook. And metta gently reminds us, you do not need to do everything. You only need to do what is yours to do, with a soft and open heart. Let me tell you the story of a humble village woman who came to the Buddha, her face drawn with exhaustion. She had lost her husband young and raised 4 children on her own. She worked from dawn till dusk, never asking for help. "Why do I feel so tired all the time?" she asked him through tears. The Buddha looked at her and said, "Because you have mistaken the basket of the world for your own." He didn't mean she shouldn't love or serve others, only that she had forgotten to serve herself as well. That line has stayed with me. The basket of the world. How many baskets have you carried for others, silently, faithfully, even when your hands trembled? And how often have you felt guilt at the mere thought of setting one down? But here's what wisdom knows. When you stop carrying what isn't yours, you don't become weaker, you become free. And in that freedom, you can finally tend to what is yours with deeper care. Your breath, your body, your joy, your peace. There was once a man who spent his whole life helping others. He was admired, respected, constantly sought after. But he rarely rested, rarely said no. In his late 60s, he began to suffer from chest pain and fatigue. After much coaxing, he visited a forest monastery. There, an old monk offered him tea, sat with him in silence, and finally said, "Your heart is tired not from giving, but from forgetting it belongs to you too." The man wept, not out of sorrow, but out of recognition. He had never been given permission to release the burden of being everything for everyone. And maybe that's what you need to hear today. You have permission. Permission to rest. Permission to soften. Permission to say, "I've done enough for today." Because compassion without boundaries becomes depletion. And trust, real, rooted trust, means believing that the world can continue spinning even if you sit down for a while. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." And I would add, peace also comes when you stop holding the illusion that everything depends on you. So breathe now, feel the weight you've carried, some of it for decades. Feel it not with judgment, but with tenderness. You did what you knew how to do. You gave what you could. And now you are being invited into a new rhythm, one that doesn't require constant holding, constant doing, constant bracing against the world. Let that be the doorway into part 12, our final step in this journey, where we will gently gather all that trust has shown us and reflect on the difference between a life built on force and a life rooted in peace. A life where you are no longer proving your worth, but simply living from it. Part 12. Trust builds a life that doesn't break. At this stage in life, you've likely seen it all. Ambition rising, families growing, relationships deepening, and sometimes fading. You've watched people climb ladders only to fall, watched others lose themselves in the race for more. Perhaps at times you too have been caught in that current, pushing, striving, believing that if you could just hold it together long enough, peace would arrive at the end of all your efforts. But over time, something shifts. You begin to see that force may get you somewhere, but it rarely helps you stay. Because anything built on pressure eventually cracks. But a life built on trust, that life bends, flows, and endures. There's a well-known Buddhist metaphor, the story of the bamboo and the oak tree. The oak stands tall and proud, unyielding in the storm. The bamboo, slender and soft, sways with the wind. When the monsoon arrives, the mighty oak breaks under its own resistance. But the bamboo, rooted in the earth and flexible in form, survives, not by force, but by yielding. Trust is like the bamboo. It doesn't break when life shakes. It moves with life, not against it. You may not be chasing big dreams anymore, but perhaps you're chasing something deeper. A sense of wholeness, a life that feels real, not perfect, not loud, just honest, soft, sustainable. And that's what trust offers. It invites you to stop living from fear, fear of being alone, of being forgotten, of being left behind. It invites you to rest in your own presence, to live not to be seen, but to be felt by yourself most of all. A woman I once met, well into her 80s, told me, "When I was younger, I thought success was about how far I could go. Now, I think it's about how deeply I can stay." And that, I believe, is the quiet reward of trust. It teaches you to build a life not that impresses, but that nourishes, one that doesn't collapse every time the winds of change blow. Let's be honest, the world often celebrates the loudest voice, the quickest win, the busiest schedule. But those things rarely last. Trust is not loud. It doesn't post, promote, or beg to be noticed. It simply stands where it is, grounded and still. And from that stillness, it attracts the right people, the right rhythms, the right kind of peace. The Buddha taught, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship. Notice he didn't say speed, productivity, or performance. He spoke of what endures. Trust is woven into all three, into how you care for your body gently, how you feel satisfied with less, how you remain true to your heart without needing validation. And here's something you might not expect. When you stop trying so hard to make things happen, life begins to meet you halfway. Not always on your timeline, not always in your preferred form, but in a way that feels surprisingly gentle, even miraculous. Because now you are no longer pushing against life. You're walking with it. So take a breath with me. Feel how far you've come. Not in miles, but in letting go. in trusting your own quiet knowing, in remembering that who you are is not what you do. It's how you carry yourself through the changes, how you soften when you could have hardened, how you return to stillness when the world calls for noise. This isn't the end of your journey. If anything, it's the beginning of a new one built not on the fragile scaffolding of control, but on the deep-rooted strength of trust. And now we arrive at the gentle closing of our path together. If you're ready, I can move into the conclusion, where we'll offer a quiet blessing and leave the door open for those who wish to keep walking this path with presence, peace, and gentleness. Would you like me to continue with the final section? So now, here you are, not at the finish line, but at a softer place along the path, a place where the wind no longer needs to be conquered, and the silence no longer feels empty. You've walked through stories of effort, of release, of letting go. You've felt the ache of trying too hard, and the quiet relief that comes when you finally stop. Not because you gave up, but because you remembered you were never meant to hold everything alone. If this journey has stirred something within you, a sigh, a memory, a loosening in your chest, let that be enough. Let that be the beginning of something new. Trust, as you've now seen, is not a destination. It's a way of being, a way of sitting with what is, without needing to fix or force, a way of showing up for your own heart, gently, faithfully, day by day. As you move forward, may you no longer chase what was never yours. May you stop gripping what longs to be released, and may you trust, truly trust, that what is meant for you will find you when you're no longer pushing it away with fear. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be slow. You are allowed to live from peace, not performance. And if this message touched a quiet place within you, I invite you to walk this path with me again. Like, share, or simply carry these words with you into the hush of evening. Until we meet again, may your life be shaped not by urgency, but by presence. And may you find in every step, in every breath, that you already belong.